Welcome to Pax Europiana. This is Günther Fellinger speaking. It's a historic moment, absolutely I think, epoch-making moment when now Ukraine will get the future in the European Union. Might it take 10 years, 15 years, might it take 20 years, but it will get it. And the EU Commission officially endorses that policy. That is what Ukrainians were fighting from the moment of Euromaidan, actually from the Orange Revolution, when later then the Germans and Austrians betrayed Ukraine, Orange Ukraine, and Putin got it back. Then came the second Ukrainian, or actually the third pro-European revolution, because let's never forget the RUK movement, the pro-European RUK movement, and Chernobyl. Vladislav Chernobyl, who was basically, I think, murdered by Putin for that one in 99 in this fake car accident. It was the first effort in the 90s, the second one, the orange one, where we betrayed Ukraine, and the third one, Euromaidan, where they were pushing hard to have a European future, and it was rejected from 2014 to 2022. So it is absolutely historic, and it is absolute big achievement. Congratulations, Ursula von der Leyen, Roberta Metsola, and Charles Michel, and all European leaders who got this done. I think it will now hopefully also approved at the European Council. That's an open question, because the Russian asset Orban can always block that, and we will see. Even I counsel for caution when it will be just a potential EU candidate country status in the council decision next Thursday. That's also a major historic progress, because having the same status like Bosnia and Kosovo is a very good thing to have as a next step. And then the EPA funding, the instruments of pre-accession, and the promise of a EU future, and this will be Budmo, Ukraine, it will be like that, and that's very historic. The same for Georgia, it's supposedly only potential EU candidate status. For Moldova to get the candidate status, that's very, very good. And by the way, get also Kosovo the candidate status, get Bosnia the candidate status, so much better to be united, get everybody the candidate status from all the 9 countries. It's the best for me, absolutely. But if it's just a potential EU candidate status, it's also absolutely the key moment of a European future, which we must interpret as a success, and it's very good. But it both doesn't win us the war, it both doesn't really, it's not the moment of, it's a historic moment, but it's not the one thing which decides that war. Obviously, weapons are key and finances are key. I call again for all the weapons Ukraine needs to reconquer Kherson and Zaporizhzhia Oblast, not Crimea and Donbass. That's unfortunately, I think, technically, militarily impossible at the moment, and for many years we want to win that institutionally. So it's important also to win the battle for NATO membership, because all these countries need also to be in NATO. There is no doubt. The EU is just the first step. We are twin sisters, EU and NATO, so it's absolutely important to win that. But I want to specifically now talk about the euro for Ukraine and for all the 9 countries. Actually, Montenegro, bravo, has it already. Actually, also Kosovo, very good decision, because post-war, the Balkan Wars, the mark was introduced, and then the euro. And I want to talk now about all the currency history of these countries, and why it's important to unite all the 9 countries in the euro, and why this is the key decisive moment which we need to add now after the political strategic decision of responsibility for Ukraine is taken this week. It's the euro which has to be added in the portfolio, the euro for Ukraine, for Georgia, for Moldova, on the model of Kosovo and Montenegro. This is the way to get this done and to win the war economically, to win it institutionally. And of course, weapons are key to winning wars. There is no doubt, and NATO must ultimately intervene. But I want to focus now on the currency policy, because it's often underestimated what kind of role it played in the European history and in world history. Because I remind, first of all, in the battle after, let's make it in the First World War. After that, the currency policy totally went wrong, a total disaster, and we had a real crisis. After the Second World War, the Americans took more responsibility over time, and they have then, after 2 or 3 years of differing, they have then reconstructed Japan and Western Germany with the help of euro-pegged currencies. The German mark was introduced in 1948 by the by the Americans. It was printed there, it was pegged. Pegged means a fixed exchange rate to the dollar. The same was done for the yen in Japan. It broke down in the 70s under our terrible decade, but then of course many countries, they have pegged to the German mark, like for example the Austrian shilling, and that's why I was educated as economist in the Austrian hard shilling policy, and I recommend it for all the countries in the post-war context, and most countries have done it. The 3 Baltic countries have done it after the end of the Cold War, and they pegged the currency to often basket or some of to the mark and some to the dollar. But nevertheless, when the euro came, they pegged it to the euro, and then they have then started fast-track euroization, and they are all in the eurozone. Bravo Baltic countries, they were together in the Soviet Union with Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine. They did something right, they are actually very good reformers. Why don't you do the same policy? From the Baltics, come to the Balkans. Bulgaria did the currency peg, very good policy. Bosnia did the currency peg, very good policy, worked very well. Same for North Macedonia, currency peg. Even Serbia has pegged its currency now since 10 years now, 2012, to the euro, very successful currency. And most successful it was done by Kosovo and Montenegro, get away from this terrible dinar and introduced the German mark first in 1999 to get rid of the dinar, and then transit directly to the euro. There were no independent countries, there was an exemption made. The EU Commission didn't like it, the central bank didn't like it because of the precedent factor, and that's exactly why I like it, because there is the precedent now, and we need a precedent. We need, of course, now in this post-war situation, or during the war actually, even worse situation we have now in Ukraine, but also with the huge economic shocks and fallouts on Georgia, on Moldova, they are the worst hits, but on the Balkans, on all European countries. What's the answer? It's obviously more unity. That's why Romania must join the Eurozone, that's why Poland must join the Eurozone, that's why Czech Republic must join the Eurozone very fast now in this mandate. Get it done, tuk, 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 very fast. They fulfill most of the criteria, the rest just invented criteria to make it difficult for them, but then basically they are economically very good performing countries, and they have low debt rates, and that's the most important. They have much lower debt than, for example, Italy or Greece or Spain or Belgium or even France. And so let's be serious and let's get these 3 countries now very in. That gives momentum. Bulgaria get going. This Russian asset party, which is Putin created, is blocking everything. That's a big scandal, but they should be get going, and then we have a big success in Bulgaria. Croatia is already rolling out, and the kuna is over, and I'm very happy about it. So now only then the Russian asset Orban will do the forint and this disaster policy. That's of course very regrettable, but there's little to be done but cutting all the subsidies to Hungary. If they block now the Ukraine decision, anyhow we have to isolate them and exit them from the European Union, because such a Russian asset like Orban has no right to be in the European Union and to eat our subsidies, and must be expelled if he does that. Let's be sure about it. So let's come back to the euro. Why the euro then for all the countries like Albania, like North Macedonia, like Bosnia? Very good policy. Obviously, you know, this will take a long time, the EU integration still, unfortunately, for these countries. Montenegro is the most advanced. So now the moment is for Albania, for Macedonia, for Bosnia to basically transit to the euro unilateral at the same way, and then to go also for Ukraine and for Moldova, for Georgia, to euroize. It's much better policy, because economically, and now it's a historic moment. I see at the moment when the EC is publishing their opinion on EU candidates of Ukraine, it's such a historic moment. I'm so happy about it. But go for the euro. Why? We need a big package of debt anyhow to finance all the war debts and all the war costs and all the related economic shocks and the rearmament. I'm calling since 3 months now for a 1.5 trillion package of EU debt, similar like COVID, to share all the costs over 20 years as EU debts. It's much better than having them absorbed in the system immediately. That's deflationary, that's stability, that's good leadership, that's European unity, that's Hamilton moment. That's what we need to do to rearm Europe, to win this war, to contain Russia, to get off the Russian energy, oil, uranium, gas. It's very expensive. Let's share the costs for all 450 million taxpayers and the cost of integration of Ukraine, of reconstruction. This is the much better policy. But such a huge reconstruction effort is much better to be based on our own currency, because we are safe from devaluation, from currency shocks, currency failures. It's much better if Ukraine bases this kind of maybe $500 billion reconstruction package, which the EU alone will have to do over time anyhow. That's the cost, and that will be about what will be the share of the European taxpayers. The rest for the Americans, Canadians and Japanese and the world taxpayers. But it will be very important to do that on the basis of the euro, and with Romania and Ukraine in the euro. For Moldova it's just logical, and for Georgia, of course, when they're a little bit behind and a little bit squeezed between all these hostile states, it's much better to euroize immediately. And that worked very well in Montenegro and in Kosovo. And it's not true that it makes everything expensive. It's not true that it is somehow hurting the governments. They have less sovereignty. Yes, much the better, because they're often very badly managing their small currency as well. And to be in a big currency area has economically major advantages in price transparency, in competitive market access, also competitive pressures, but also more opportunities in market access. And I don't recommend euroization for New Zealand, but I recommend it for the countries which have a DCFTA and are on the way to the European Union, like these countries, because they will anyhow one day adopt the euro, and they will also be legally, fully, and then politically in the Eurozone after they are members, and then they have to fulfill all the criteria. But this is historic, and this is the best way to do it. It's much better to accelerate, because only that way the countries can smooth in. And true, Kosovo is not smoothing into the EU just because of the euro, but economically it's surprisingly doing well. It's doing better than Georgia. Georgia has done much better reforms, but Kosovo has, of course, the euro. It's a major benchmark, and every euro you invest in the eurozone, in the euro country, Kosovo is safe. There is no devaluation, there is no currency risk, and that's, of course, the much better policy in economics. That's a much better policy for lower interest rates, for lower inflation. And of course, it's also much better for inflation lowering all over Europe when we get 60 million more people into the internal market by the currency, basically. Of course, there needs more than that for the internal market. I understand it very well. But when we also put them into the customs union, it's a big deflationary trend because of so many more people in the European labor market. That is also necessary to open the labor market in all countries in Europe, for all the new 9 countries. That's deflationary. More trade, more people in one market, that's deflationary. And that's what I'm calling for. And it's the best policy to do for taxpayers, for deflation, for lower interest rates, for higher investments, for faster integration, and the symbolism. That's the most important, actually, because euro, the currency you use every single day in any transaction, saving, investing, buying, trading, you use the currency. And that gives the symbolism directly in the hands of all the Ukrainians, Moldovans, Georgians, Albanians, Macedonians, that they use the euro. That is basically the tool they use every day 50,000 times in every calculation, in every transaction. Use the euro, you're part of the eurozone, not fully politically, but mentally. And also the Russians, to the contrary, they have introduced now the ruble in Crimea, and in the trying in Kherson even. Reconquer Kherson, by the way, and in Zaporizhia, Mariupol, reconquer them, and in Donbass. And so that's the tool to do it. Symbolism, it matters in politics, and so that's why I call for economic, for strategically, for political, for anti-inflationary reason, and for all possible reasons I call for the euro for Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, for Albania, Macedonia, Bosnia, And also for Serbia, we should be not granting it immediately, but on the condition they recognize Kosovo, and so as a peace tool where also if Mr. Vucic wants to come clean with his historic war guilt and also really join the EU, recognize Kosovo, and then also get the euro, that we can do very fast. It's a fast deployable tool. Membership will take 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years. It's not so easy to do because you have to really fulfill mentally all kind of foreign policy criteria to join a political union. That's very difficult for pro-Russian Serbia under this leadership. But if they want to come clean, there's the offer, and that's my peace offer. It's the Euro for Peace, I call this project and this proposition, and it is mattering very much. And by the way, also Georgia, Ukraine and Moldova and Bosnia recognize Kosovo, obviously, but we should be more lenient with them in the meantime to have the euro not as a condition for recognition of Kosovo, but as a kind of request to do exactly that. So now it's the historic day. This Friday is very special for me because we have these major announcements now on CNN Live. The president is on air. I will watch that now, but I call additionally to the EU candidate status, allow the euro for these countries. And I ask all these countries, all the new countries, adopt the euro. Because failed currencies will fail your people, will fail your consumers, your taxpayers. It's a big mistake to keep the hryvnia. It's a big mistake to keep the lei or the lari or the lev or the whatever, the dinar, lek. All these monies, they are failed, and the Bosnian mark, it's better, of course. I don't want to discredit all of them. Some of them working better because they are backed already to the euro. So it makes little difference to go fully in, and that's what I'm calling for. Have courage, policymakers and leaders, adopt the euro, and have courage, EU leaders, let them adopt the euro. And let's be much more united immediately, which we need now in face of this Russian terrible aggression, and give all the weapons Ukraine needs to reconquer Kherson and Zaporizhia. Thanks a lot for that. Best regards to all friends of Ukraine. Slava Ukraine, European Ukraine. Budmo. I made a lot of cheers at the years I lived in Ukraine for Budmo, and Budmo it will be in the EU, and all the enemies who were opposing it. Okay. I don't threaten them, but all the people of the faint-hearted who were so long blocking me and blocking Ukraine and fighting my proposals for Ukraine and Georgia and Moldova to join the EU, you failed. And you could have saved the European taxpayers trillions of damage if you listened to me, and you could have saved hundreds, thousands, I don't say 100,000, but all over this war will be in the 100,000s of deaths. I'm sure about it, and in the trillions of damages, and they're all to blame on European appeasement, on the bad economics of the protectionists, of the xenophobes, of the pro-Russophiles, of this kind of whatever, from Schröder to Schüssel, and all their acolytes who are just repeating some standard lines, and all the left and extreme nationalists living from the Russian money for the last decade, and they have done so much harm to Europe, and they cost us trillions. We should sue them, but first of all we should all vote them out of power when they were for appeasement from after 2014, and all these terrible processes and Minsk IIs and all this appeasement and Bucharest defeats of 2008. This was all a tragic mistake, and now we paid trillions in damage and so much life and so dangerous situation today in this terrible war of the Russian terrorist state against European Ukraine and against all us, because we're all paying for the costs of it. And that's a horrible kind of consequences of 14 years of appeasement. Basically, since 2008, we have in Europe moved to this terrible line of dancing with the Russian bear and shifting away from America, and that was a big strategic, horrific mistake, and we should all never repeat that again. Be close with America, our friend and ally, and against Russia, our enemy, and united all friends of Europe and America together in one currency, the euro in Europe, and of course in one customs union, in one defense alliance, and ultimately in the European Union, our political home. And those who have excluded by xenophobic, protectionist, anti-Semitic and anti-capitalist and anti-American reasons this enlargement from the Bucharest summit because they were fancily deals with Moscow and were on the Moscow timeline and payroll, they should be punished by the criminal prosecutions as traitors. And they should be also investigated for their financial links with Russia. And that will all come, be sure about it. Anyhow, today is a big day for the European enlargement. I will watch this declaration now, and thanks a lot for supporting European Ukraine, European Georgia, European Moldova, and the European Balkans. And let's contain Russia and pressure it out of the European sphere, and it will fall anyhow, as all failing empires will do. Good. Celebrate Slava Ukraine. Thanks a lot. And support Kosovo recognition by Ukraine, please. And let's do decent, united foreign policy in the future. And please adopt the euro in the European Union and all enlargement countries. Thanks a lot. All the best. Bye from Pax Europiana.